I spent 25 years in show business. So retrospectively, when I think about it, I was working with dysregulated brains for a really long time. I just didn't know exactly what I could do about it other than try to manage their behaviors. But that career sort of waned in its interest for me. And somewhere towards the end of it, I had a daughter who was clearly a little different. It's our first child, and her interactions with the world were just a little behind. Nothing that was overtly would sound an alarm, but we observed as parents there was something probably a little developmentally delayed in her, let's put it that way. So we got her into kindergarten, first grade, and all of a sudden the demands of life became much more apparent. Then her interactions with the world became more obvious to us, not so much when she was just hanging out with us at home. So we went on a journey to find out what this was all about, and we had several different diagnoses. It was sensory processing disorder. There was attention deficit disorder. I think there was one more in there. I can't even remember what it was. But we finally ended up with an autism diagnosis, the subset of which was PDD-NOS, which is frankly very evocative of my daughter. Pervasively developmentally delayed, not otherwise specified. We don't know. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. But it set us on a journey of trying to figure out what we could do to help this kid. And she had behaviors that were really challenging. She'd scream and run out across the street through traffic. I mean, it was stuff that was really quite dangerous at times. And so in an effort to try to find out how we could help manage these, we visited the doctors like you all do. What's wrong with my kid? Went to a developmental pediatrician who sent us to UCLA, and we got this diagnosis, and we got into the system. And the system is designed, by and large, to manage behaviors. And so we got into the psychopharmacological arena. She must have done 15 or 20 major medications over a couple-year period. Anticonvulsants, antipsychotics, you get on the list. We tried just about everything to try to get some of these things to work for her so that she could at least calm herself down to the point where she could have a meaningful interaction with the world. And to an extent, they worked. She wasn't as destructive. She wasn't as rageful. She wasn't a lot of things. She also... Sorry. She also wasn't my daughter. She was just this... It came very clear to us. We were at a holiday party at school. And all the kids are singing and they have little hats on and doing all this stuff. And my daughter was, oddly enough, right in the center and was staring vacantly out into space. Not singing, she could have been on the moon. It was unimportant where she was. She was not interacting with her world. So we said, okay, this is not going to happen. I can't live like this. I can't live with this, what I'm doing to this child. I mean, the guilt, you saw me choke up a second ago, that's from my own guilt of what I did with the best of intentions. I mean, no disrespect to anybody we were involved with. Everybody is trying to find a solution for these kids and try to find what we can put together that's going to make them functional. And I said, okay, but this road of pharmacology clearly is not happening for us. The side effects are too profound, weight gains and lethargy and excessive sleep, and it just to get on the list. Mostly it was that vacantness that distressed me so much and distressed my wife. So a friend told us about this thing called neurofeedback. I'm like, what's that? Oh, it's this thing. They put these things on your head. It trains the brain. Okay, well, sure, we'll try it. We were trying anything. And I went to a couple of different practitioners. Joy Lunt, who's a veteran, has been doing this for 30 years. Shout out to Joy. We did traditional neurofeedback, QEEG-guided neurofeedback. And we also fortuitously ran into another practitioner who did this different form of neurofeedback, this infralow frequency training, which is how I ended up getting involved with it. The brain is an amazing organ. It seeks information, it seeks homeostasis, it seeks to find calm, it needs to reduce fear, it looks for and strategizes ways to manage its own behavior. So any information you give it, it will take it in and it'll try to do something with it. But through this process of neurofeedback, we got her to the point where we could get her off all of her medications. If it did nothing other than that, I would have been thrilled. If it just got her off her meds, I would have been happy. But we noticed an increase in her ability to interact with people, to skill sets. I mean, silly things. I mean, I'm not silly in a sense if you're struggling with this. One of our symptoms that we look for in clients who come to us, we ask them about their handwriting. People go, what are you asking me about my handwriting for? It is remarkable across ADD, autism spectrum disorder, any number of conditions. Handwriting is a huge marker. My daughter's handwriting was indecipherable. It had this really strange pattern, big letters, little letters. It was crazy. She now has the best handwriting in our family. It's almost calligraphic. It's so gorgeous. So point is that she started to gain function over her body, over her emotions, over her socialization, her interactions with others, but be it family or friends, that increase in her ability to interact with strangers, which is always a challenge in the spectrum disorder children, all started to improve. So we're like, this is magical. And I agreed and said, yes, it is magical, and this is something I want to be a part of. So neurofeedback works, you can think of any system or any organism is dependent upon feedback. One-celled creatures, amoeba, have feedback. They reach out to something. If it's either good or bad, and it makes in its own way. It doesn't even have a brain. It makes a decision organically to move forward or to retreat. Go all the way up to the higher animals like ourselves. We're making much more complicated decisions about what's interesting, not interesting, fear-making, what's appropriate response behavior in our system. So we're always dealing with feedback. Feedback is the nature of life. We couldn't exist without it. What neurofeedback does, well, is biofeedback. Some of you are familiar if you ever had a mood ring, the first biofeedback device. It actually was measuring your skin temperature and would change the color of the stone in the mood ring. That's biofeedback. So you're getting a witness of something that's actually going on internally. You're getting a visible manifestation of it. There's heart rate variability training. There's skin conductivity. There's measuring sweat glands. There's all kinds of biofeedback. Neurofeedback is a subset of biofeedback in a sense, but we're using EEG signaling to present back as the feedback mechanism for understanding what's going on inside the brain. We're measuring amplitude. We put little tiny sensors on your head, very traditional stuff, been going on for 75, 80 years now. This is not anything that just happened yesterday. So the amplitude of the signal is interesting because we want to find out what those variations are. What is the pattern that's being observed here on the brain, by the brain, and how can it readjust to get a better pattern? So by providing feedback in whatever manner you choose to provide it, you're giving information to that organ, the brain, so that it can make best decision. How do I approach that? The brain is sitting in the dark. It's reading digital information coming from your ears or your eyes or whatever, so it isn't really interacting with reality as we perceive it. It's processing information. What we do in neurofeedback is give it specific, in the moment, targeted information on its function. What are you doing right now? Is that useful information for you or not? If it's not useful information, stop doing it. What we mean by that is what we present to the client is a change of pattern on a video screen, let's say. So there'll be some flickering of a screen will get bigger and smaller. It's very obvious to the person sitting in the chair what's happening, but more importantly, it's obvious to the brain. Oh my gosh, that's me. It recognizes over a period of time. That's why the training takes a while. And now let's characterize this, by the way, for anybody who's watching. It's not a therapy. It truly isn't. This is a training tool. This trains the brain in self-awareness and self-regulation. And the second being derived from the first. It has to become aware of its own signal, and then it will organically strategize a way to regulate, because that's its evolutionarily designed outcome. So we're presenting these variations in electrical signaling to the client sitting in the chair for their observation. Over a course of a few sessions, the brain finally recognizes, oh my goodness, that's me. The television isn't blowing up. That's actually my circuitry doing that. what do I need to do? What's the management I'm going to put in here so that'll stop? Because I'm spending energy. I don't want to every time because it's a pattern. I have to discern it. I have to make a judgment about it. Tying into that, is it dangerous concept?